Captain Maria Santos stared at the twisted wreckage of her ship's communication array, steam still rising from the melted metal. The attack had come without warning, alien vessels dropping out of hyperspace like metallic vultures, their weapons cutting through the research vessel New Horizon like it was made of paper. Now, drifting in the void between stars, she was humanity's last hope of sending a message home. "Rodriguez, how bad is it?" she called to her chief engineer, who was buried shoulder-deep in sparking circuits. "Bad, Captain. Real bad." Rodriguez emerged, his face streaked with grease and burns. "The main transmitter is fried, backup's gone, and even the emergency beacon got hit. We're basically shouting into space with a broken megaphone." Maria clenched her fists. 3 hours ago, they'd been conducting routine surveys in the Kepler 442 system, documenting what appeared to be abandoned alien structures on the fourth planet. Then the Zephyrians had arrived, a species humanity had never encountered before, but one that clearly didn't appreciate visitors. The attack had been swift and merciless. The New Horizon was a science vessel, armed with nothing more than mining lasers and good intentions. Against the sleek, predatory ships of the Zephyrian fleet, they might as well have been throwing rocks. "What about the quantum entanglement communicator?" Maria asked, grasping at straws. Rodriguez shook his head. "That's for emergencies only, and it's got maybe one shot left in it before the quantum field collapses. Plus, it's only got enough power to send a basic SOS signal." "Then that's what we'll do." Maria moved to the backup communication console, her fingers dancing over the controls. "How long until they come back to finish us off?" Through the shattered viewport, she could see the Zephyrian ships regrouping in the distance, their hull patterns shifting like oil on water. They moved with a predatory grace that made her skin crawl. 30 minutes, maybe less, reported Lieutenant Commander James Park from the tactical station. "Their energy signatures are building again." Maria nodded grimly. 30 minutes to send a message that could save humanity or doom it. Because the coordinates she was about to transmit wouldn't just bring a rescue ship. They would bring her its Omega fleet. The Omega fleet was humanity's best-kept secret, a collection of warships so advanced and deadly that their very existence was classified at the highest levels. Maria knew about them only because of her previous service in naval intelligence, where she'd helped design some of their more exotic weapons systems. The fleet had been built for one purpose: to ensure that if humanity ever faced extinction, they would take their enemies down with them. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly, "you sure about this? Once we send those coordinates, there's no taking it back." Maria's hand hovered over the transmission key. She thought about Earth, blue skies, green forests, 7 billion people going about their daily lives, unaware that first contact had gone catastrophically wrong. The Zephyrians had made their intentions clear: they wanted humanity gone, and they had the firepower to make it happen. "Do it," she whispered. The quantum communicator hummed to life, its exotic matter core spinning faster as it prepared to punch a message through the fabric of spacetime itself. Maria typed rapidly. "Priority Omega authorization Santos 77 Alpha. First contact hostile. Species, Zephyrian. Coordinates, 18 hours 14 minutes and 50 seconds, minus 29 degrees 45 minutes 15 seconds. Immediate response required. Humanity at risk." Her fingers stabbed down on the transmission key. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The quantum communicator shrieked as its core went supercritical, sending exotic particles cascading through dimensions humanity barely understood. The message raced across the galaxy at speeds that made light look like a lazy afternoon stroll, carrying with it the coordinates of humanity's first and possibly last alien battlefield. Then the machine died with a sound like breaking glass, leaving behind only the acrid smell of burnt quantum circuits. "Message sent," Rodriguez confirmed unnecessarily. "Now we wait," Maria said, settling into her captain's chair as the Zephyrian ships began their final approach. Admiral Sarah Chen was in the middle of her morning coffee when the Omega alert came through. The quantum communicator in her private office, a device she'd hoped never to see activated, suddenly blazed to life with red warning lights and an alarm that could wake the dead. She read the message 3 times before the full implications hit her. First contact. Hostile. Omega authorization. Jesus Christ, she breathed, then immediately activated her secure communication system. This is Admiral Chen, Priority Omega activation. I need an immediate conference with all fleet commanders. Within minutes, holographic projections of humanity's most senior military leaders were standing around her office. Admiral Torres of the Pacific Fleet, Admiral Kowalski of the Atlantic Fleet, and most importantly, Admiral Marcus Webb of the Omega Fleet itself. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen began without preamble, we have a situation. 47 minutes ago, we received an Omega priority transmission from the science vessel New Horizon. Captain Santos reports first contact with a hostile alien species in the Kepler 442 system. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Webb, a scarred veteran of the Martian corporate wars, leaned forward. Sarah, are you telling me that our worst-case scenario just became reality? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Captain Santos used proper authorization codes, and she's one of our former intelligence assets. If she's calling for Omega response, then we're looking at an extinction-level threat. Admiral Torres, the youngest of the group, raised her hand. What do we know about these Zephyrians? Nothing, Chen admitted. Literally nothing. But if they took out a science vessel and made Santos think humanity was at risk, then we have to assume they're not interested in peaceful coexistence. Webb was already pulling up star charts. Kepler 442 is 97 light-years from Earth. Even with our fastest ships, it would take the conventional fleet 6 months to get there. By then, these aliens could have traced the New Horizons course back to Earth. How long would it take the Omega fleet? Chen asked. Webb's smile was cold as winter. 48 hours. Maybe less if we pushed the hyperspace drives. The Omega fleet was humanity's ace in the hole, built in secret shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt and powered by technology that pushed the boundaries of physics. While the rest of humanity's navy relied on conventional fusion drives and basic energy weapons, the Omega fleet packed exotic matter reactors, quantum tunneling torpedoes, and enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. There were only 12 ships in the Omega fleet, but each one was worth 100 conventional warships. There's something else, Chen continued. The transmission included tactical data. The Zephyrians appear to have multiple ship classes, all with energy weapons significantly more advanced than ours. They also seem to have some kind of adaptive shielding technology. Webb studied the data with the eye of a man who'd spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Adaptive shields, energy weapons, superior numbers. They sound like everything we designed the Omega fleet to fight. Admiral, Torres interjected, are we really talking about taking 12 ships against an entire alien fleet? That's not strategy, that's suicide. Webb looked at her with the patience of a teacher explaining a simple concept. Admiral Torres, you're thinking like a conventional military officer. The Omega fleet doesn't fight fair, because fairness is a luxury we can't afford. These ships were designed to end wars in hours, not months. Chen stood up, her decision made. Admiral Webb, you have authorization to deploy the Omega fleet to Kepler 442. Rules of engagement are simple, if they're hostile to humanity, they don't get to go home. Understood, Admiral. We'll launch within the hour. As the holographic projections faded, Chen stared out her office window at the Earth below. Blue oceans, white clouds, the cradle of human civilization. In 48 hours, the fate of everything she saw would be decided by 12 ships carrying weapons that most people couldn't even imagine. She reached for her coffee cup and realized her hand was shaking. The New Horizon lasted another 17 minutes before the Zephyrians finished what they'd started. Captain Santos watched through her cracked viewport as sleek alien ships moved into position, their weapons charging with an ominous purple glow. All hands, brace for impact, she announced over the ship's dying calm system. The end, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. A single energy beam, perfectly calibrated, pierced the ship's hull and detonated the fusion reactor. The New Horizon simply ceased to exist in a brief, brilliant flash that illuminated the alien fleet like a camera bulb. Aboard the Zephyrian command ship Void's Edge, Commander Kresh observed the destruction with satisfaction. The primitive creatures that had dared to trespass on sacred ground had been dealt with appropriately. Their pathetic vessel had offered no resistance worth mentioning. Kresh was a veteran of 17 conquest campaigns, his chitinous exoskeleton bearing the ritual scars of each victory. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding for over 1,000 years, absorbing or destroying every species they encountered. These new aliens, humans, according to their intercepted communications, would be no different. "Commander," reported his tactical officer, "we've recovered some debris from the alien vessel. Their technology appears to be roughly equivalent to our ancestors from 6 centuries ago." Pathetic, Kresh clicked, his mandibles expressing contempt. "Have you located their homeworld?" Navigation data suggests a system approximately 97 light-years in that direction. "Shall I order the fleet to prepare for invasion?" Kresh considered this. The Zephyrian fleet currently numbered 47 ships, more than enough to handle a primitive species. But protocol demanded that first contact situations be reported to the High Command. "No," he decided. "First, we investigate this system thoroughly. These aliens may have left other vessels or monitoring stations. We will eliminate all evidence of their presence, then report to the Empire. The High Command will decide whether this new species is worth conquering or simply removing." "Understood, Commander." The fleet will begin systematic sweeps of the system. Kresh settled back into his command throne, already composing his report. Another primitive species discovered, another easy victory for the Empire. By the time the High Command authorized invasion, his fleet would have mapped every human outpost and defensive position. The conquest would be swift and total. He had no way of knowing that 47 ships were about to face an enemy that had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. The Omega fleet launched from Titan base with no fanfare, no speeches, and no witnesses except the automated defense platforms that had been guarding humanity's greatest secret for 20 years. 12 ships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and desperation, slipped into hyperspace like shadows fleeing the dawn. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the ONS Retribution, the fleet's flagship, watching the swirling chaos of hyperspace through the forward viewport. Around him, his hand-picked crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who knew exactly what they were capable of. "Navigation, ETA to target system?" Webb asked. 41 hours, 17 minutes at current velocity, came the crisp reply from Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim. "Hyperspace currents are favorable." Webb nodded. The Retribution was cutting through dimensions at a speed that would have been impossible just 20 years ago, powered by exotic matter reactors that converted pure energy into thrust. The other 11 ships of his fleet were spread out in a formation that existed partially in normal space and partially in hyperspace, a formation that conventional sensors would never detect. "Commander Hayes," Webb called to his tactical officer, "status on the fleet's weapon systems?" "All ships report full readiness, Admiral. Quantum torpedoes loaded, singularity cannons charged, and phase shields at maximum efficiency. The new neural disruption warheads are also online and ready for deployment." Webb permitted himself a small smile. The neural disruption warheads were his personal contribution to humanity's arsenal, weapons that didn't just destroy ships, but sent feedback pulses through any networked alien consciousness. If the Zephyrians used anything resembling a hive mind or shared battlefield awareness, those warheads would turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Martinez, "we're receiving periodic updates from our deep space monitoring stations. No sign of alien ships moving toward Earth, but long-range sensors have detected significant activity in the target system." "What kind of activity?" "Multiple energy signatures moving in search patterns. It looks like they're conducting systematic sweeps of the entire system." Webb frowned. That suggested the aliens were thorough, professional, and experienced. They weren't just raiders or pirates, they were military, and they knew their business. "Any estimate on their numbers?" "Difficult to say at this range, but we're looking at 40 to 50 ships, all roughly cruiser-sized or larger." The bridge fell silent. 50 ships against 12. Under normal circumstances, those would be impossible odds. But the Omega fleet hadn't been built for normal circumstances. "Gentlemen," Webb announced to his crew, 40 hours from now, we're going to be fighting for the future of our species. I won't lie to you, the odds are not in our favor. But we have something those aliens don't have: we know what we're fighting for. Every person on Earth, every child who hasn't been born yet, every dream humanity has ever had. That's worth fighting for. That's worth dying for. He paused, looking at each of his officers in turn. But more importantly, that's worth killing for. When we drop out of hyperspace in the Kepler 442 system, we're not going there to negotiate or explore or make friends. We're going there to end a threat to humanity before it can become something worse. We're going there to win. The crew responded with a chorus of "Yes, sir," that echoed through the ship's corridors. Webb returned to studying the tactical displays, his mind already running through dozens of attack scenarios. The Zephyrians had numbers, but humanity had desperation, advanced technology, and the element of surprise. Most importantly, humanity had Admiral Marcus Webb, a man who had spent his entire career learning how to turn impossible odds into inevitable victories. In the Kepler 442 system, Commander Kresh was growing increasingly frustrated. His fleet had spent 18 hours systematically searching every planet, moon, and asteroid in the system, and they'd found nothing. No hidden bases, no monitoring stations, no sign that the primitive humans had established any permanent presence here. The debris from their destroyed ship had yielded little useful information. The aliens' technology was indeed primitive, but their ship's computer core had been completely destroyed in the explosion. Whatever data it might have contained about their homeworld was lost. "Commander," reported his sensor officer, "we've completed sweeps of planets 1 through 6. All show signs of ancient predecessor ruins, but no recent alien activity." Kresh clicked his mandibles in annoyance. The predecessor ruins were why this system was considered sacred ground, ancient structures left behind by a species that had vanished millions of years ago. The Zephyrian Empire claimed all predecessor sites as religious territory, which made the humans' presence here not just trespassing, but blasphemy. What about the 7th planet? Gas giant, no moons of significant size. We detected some unusual energy readings in its upper atmosphere, but they appear to be natural phenomena. Continue the search. I want every cubic meter of this system examined. These aliens didn't find this place by accident, they must have had a reason for coming here. What Kresh didn't know was that the unusual energy readings his sensor officer had dismissed were actually the traces left by the New Horizons quantum communicator when it had punched Captain Santos's message through spacetime. The readings were too exotic for Zephyrian sensors to properly interpret, and too faint to suggest their true significance. As his fleet continued its methodical search, Kresh composed his preliminary report to the High Command. Empire Central Command, new species encountered in Sacred System 447 Kappa. Species designation, human. Technology level, primitive. Military threat, negligible. Recommend immediate conquest authorization to prevent future contamination of sacred sites. Fleet status, ready for extended operations. He sealed the message with his personal command codes and dispatched it via the fleet's quantum relay network. The High Command would receive it within 6 hours, and their response would follow shortly after. By the time they authorized the invasion of humanity's homeworld, Kresh would have completed his reconnaissance and be ready to lead the attack personally. The thought of conquering an entire new species filled him with anticipation. It had been 3 years since his last major campaign, and he was eager to add another victory to his record. He had no idea that victory was about to become the least of his concerns. The Omega fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like avenging angels materializing from the void. For a moment, the 12 ships hung motionless against the starfield, their exotic matter engines cooling and their sensors drinking in data about the tactical situation. Admiral Webb studied the holographic display that materialized above his command station, showing the positions of 47 Zephyrian ships scattered throughout the system. They were conducting search patterns, moving with the methodical precision of professionals. Analysis, Webb ordered. Commander Hayes worked his console with practiced efficiency. 47 contacts confirmed, Admiral. Energy signatures suggest advanced fusion drives and directed energy weapons. Shield configurations appear to be some kind of adaptive field technology, they're shifting frequencies every few seconds. Fleet disposition? They're spread out across the entire system, Admiral. Maximum concentration is 12 ships around the fourth planet, with smaller groups of 3 to 5 ships conducting search patterns around the other worlds. Webb nodded. The aliens had made a tactical error by spreading their forces so widely. In normal space combat, that might have been sound strategy, it prevented a single enemy attack from destroying multiple ships. But the Omega fleet didn't fight normal space combat. Communications signaled the fleet. Attack pattern Omega 7. Target the main concentration first, then work our way outward. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Kim interjected, pattern Omega 7 puts us at the center of their formation. We'll be surrounded. Exactly, Webb replied with a smile that would have made a shark nervous. They can't run if we're in the middle of them. The Omega fleet began to move, accelerating toward the fourth planet at speeds that defied conventional physics. Their exotic matter drives bent spacetime around them, creating pockets of distorted reality that made them nearly impossible to target accurately. Aboard the Void's Edge, Commander Kresh was reviewing sensor logs when his tactical officer suddenly straightened in alarm. Commander! New contacts entering the system. 12 ships, unknown configuration, approaching at impossible velocity. Kresh spun toward his tactical display, his mind racing. 12 ships? But they destroyed the only human vessel in the system hours ago. Where had these newcomers come from? Impossible velocity, he demanded. Define impossible. Sir, they're traveling at 0.97 lightspeed in normal space. That should be physically impossible without significant time dilation effects, but our sensors show no temporal distortion. Kresh felt a chill run down his exoskeleton. 0.97 lightspeed in normal space was beyond anything in the Zephyrian Empire's technology base. Even their most advanced dreadnoughts couldn't exceed 0.8 lightspeed without risking catastrophic structural failure. All ships, battle stations, he commanded. Form defensive formation around the sacred world. Prepare to engage unknown hostiles. But even as his fleet began to reposition, Kresh realized they were moving too slowly. The 12 unknown ships were covering the distance between the system's edge and the fourth planet in minutes, not hours. Commander, his sensor officer reported, his voice tight with disbelief, the unknown ships they're changing course without decelerating. They're moving in ways that violate basic physics. Through his viewport, Kresh caught his first glimpse of the human warships. They were smaller than he'd expected, sleek vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But what made his breathing spiracles contract with fear was the way they moved, sudden 90-degree turns at near light speed, impossible acceleration curves, maneuvers that should have reduced their crews to paste. What are they? He whispered. His answer came in the form of weapons fire unlike anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered. The ONS Retribution opened fire first, its quantum torpedoes streaking across space in bursts of twisted light. These weren't conventional weapons, they were packets of exotic matter that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them effectively impossible to intercept or deflect. The first torpedo struck a Zephyrian cruiser amidships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship simply ceased. Not exploded, not destroyed, it just stopped existing, leaving behind a perfectly spherical void in space where 500 alien warriors had been seconds before. What the hell was that? Commander Kresh demanded, but his tactical officer had no answer. The Omega fleet didn't give him time to figure it out. 11 more human warships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons painting space with colors that had no names. Quantum torpedoes deleted ships from reality. Singularity cannons created micro-black holes that devoured everything within a kilometer radius before safely evaporating. Phase weapons fired bullets that existed partially in another dimension, passing through shields as if they weren't there. In 30 seconds, the Zephyrian formation around the fourth planet lost half its ships. All units, return fire. Kresh screamed. Target the lead vessel. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed everything they had: plasma beams, particle cannons, gravitic torpedoes. Their weapons were advanced by the standards of most galactic civilizations, capable of cracking continents and boiling seas. They struck the human ships and did absolutely nothing. The Omega fleet's phase shields existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Conventional energy weapons simply passed through them like light through glass. The few projectile weapons that managed to phase match properly struck armor made from exotic matter held together by fields that redefined local physics. Impossible, Kresh breathed, watching his most powerful weapons fail utterly against the human ships. This is impossible. Admiral Webb smiled as he watched the alien weapons fire splash harmlessly off his ship's defenses. All vessels, advance to close range. Let's show them what humanity does to species that threaten our home. The Omega fleet surged forward, moving through the Zephyrian formation like sharks through a school of fish. At close range, their weapons became even more devastating. The ONS Nemesis unleashed a neural disruption pulse that overloaded the nervous systems of every Zephyrian within a 50-kilometer radius. The ONS Thunderbolt fired a quantum resonance beam that caused enemy ships to phase shift into alternative dimensions, stranding them in realities where physics worked differently. Commander Kresh watched his fleet die around him and finally understood what he was facing. These weren't primitive aliens with crude technology. These were apex predators, evolved in the crucible of a species that had learned to fight for its very survival. All ships, retreat, he commanded. Fall back to rally point 7. But the Omega fleet wasn't interested in letting them retreat. Admiral Webb had studied every alien conquest campaign in human historical databases, and he knew that showing mercy to a species bent on genocide was just another way of committing suicide. Pursuit course, he ordered. No survivors. What followed wasn't a battle, it was an execution. The human ships hunted down fleeing Zephyrians with ruthless efficiency, their exotic sensors tracking targets through hyperspace itself. Ships that tried to hide in asteroid fields found themselves pulled into normal space by gravitic tethers. Ships that attempted to signal for help discovered that the humans were jamming subspace across 7 dimensions. In less than 2 hours, 47 Zephyrian warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma and exotic matter. Not a single alien had survived to report back to their empire. Commander Kresh, trapped in his crippled flagship with his life support failing, managed to record one final message before the ONS Retribution finished him. Empire Command, warn the High Fleet, these humans, they're not primitive, they're nightmares made real, tell the Empire, run. The message never reached its destination. Admiral Webb had made sure of that. The aftermath of the battle left the Omega fleet floating in space that had been scoured clean of alien presence. Debris fields marked where 47 ships had died, but even the debris was being systematically destroyed by the fleet's cleanup protocols. No evidence would remain that Zephyrians had ever visited this system. Admiral Webb stood on his bridge, studying damage reports that showed his fleet had suffered exactly 0 casualties and minimal damage. The phase shields had absorbed what little damage the aliens had managed to inflict, and the exotic matter hulls had self-repaired any microscopic scratches. Admiral, Commander Hayes reported, sensor sweeps confirm no surviving alien vessels in the system. All threats have been neutralized. Excellent. Communications, prepare a message for Earth Command. Webb composed his report with the careful precision of a man who understood the historical significance of what had just occurred. Earth Command, first contact with hostile alien species resolved. Zephyrian fleet of 47 vessels eliminated with 0 friendly casualties. No survivors. Recommend immediate deep space reconnaissance to locate alien homeworld and assess threat level. Humanity's secret is safe. As the message streaked back toward Earth through quantum encrypted channels, Webb found himself staring at the star chart showing the vast galaxy beyond. Somewhere out there was the Zephyrian Empire, a civilization that had been expanding for 1,000 years, conquering or destroying every species it encountered. They had just learned that humanity existed. And more importantly, they had just learned that humanity didn't fight fair. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Kim asked quietly, "what's our next move?" Webb looked at the tactical displays showing the routes the Zephyrian ships had taken to reach this system. With some analysis, they could backtrack those routes, find the aliens' homeworld, and we go home, he decided. This was a defensive action. We've eliminated the immediate threat, but starting an interstellar war is above my pay grade. But sir, they know about Earth now. They'll be back. Webb's smile was cold and calculating. Let them come. "We'll be ready." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say, was that part of him hoped they would try. The Omega fleet had been designed to protect humanity from extinction-level threats, but it had never been truly tested in combat. Today had proven that human technology could match anything the galaxy had to offer. The question now was whether humanity would use the technology defensively, or whether they would decide that the best defense was a good offense. The Zephyrian Empire received the news of their lost fleet 12 hours later, when Commander Kresh's final transmission reached their outer monitoring stations. The message was fragmented, damaged by interference, but the essential facts were clear: 47 ships lost, new alien species encountered, technology level far beyond initial estimates. In the crystalline spires of the Imperial Palace on Zephyr Prime, High Admiral Sythex read the report with growing disbelief. The loss of an entire fleet was unprecedented in recent Imperial history. No species they'd encountered in the last 3 centuries had possessed the technology to threaten a modern Zephyrian task force. "Impossible," Sythex hissed, his voice creating harmonic resonances in the crystal walls. 47 ships cannot simply vanish. "The quantum resonance patterns suggest they were destroyed, Your Excellence," reported Intelligence Director Korth. "But the manner of their destruction is unusual. The energy signatures don't match any known weapon technology." Sythex studied the data with the cold calculation of a military leader who had overseen the conquest of 17 star systems. Whatever these humans possessed, it represented a fundamental shift in the galactic balance of power. Analysis of their homeworld's location? Navigation data from the destroyed ship suggests a system 97 light-years from the contact point. Long-range surveys indicate a single inhabited world with approximately 7 billion lifeforms. 7 billion. A respectable population for a species that had apparently been hiding advanced military technology. Sythex's mandibles clicked in thought. Military assessment? Unknown, Your Excellence. If they possess weapons capable of destroying our fleet so completely, their defensive capabilities must be assumed to be formidable. Sythex rose from his command throne, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light from Zephyr Prime's twin suns. For 1,000 years, the Empire had expanded through a simple formula: identify species, assess their value, conquer or eliminate them. This was the first time they'd encountered a species that might actually pose a threat. "Prepare the second fleet for deep reconnaissance," he ordered. 200 ships, full sensor arrays, minimal contact protocol. "I want to know everything about these humans before we decide how to proceed." "Your Excellence," Korth interjected carefully, "perhaps a diplomatic approach might be more appropriate? If their technology is truly superior." Sythex's laugh was like breaking glass. "Director, the Empire has survived for millennia because we understand a fundamental truth: there is no such thing as peaceful coexistence between expanding civilizations. Eventually, every species becomes a competitor for resources, territory, or ideology. The only question is whether you eliminate the threat while you can still win." He moved to the great viewport that showed the sprawling cities of Zephyr Prime stretching to the horizon. Billions of Zephyrians lived and worked under the protection of the Imperial fleet, trusting that their military would keep them safe from any external threat. "These humans destroyed one of our fleets, Director. That makes them dangerous. But more importantly, it makes them a challenge. And the Empire has never backed down from a challenge." Korth bowed his acknowledgement. "The second fleet will be ready to depart within 7 standard days." "Excellent. And Director?" "This time, we go prepared for a real war." As Korth departed to carry out his orders, Sythex remained at the viewport, his mind already working through the strategic implications. 200 ships would be enough to handle any conventional threat, but if the humans truly possessed technology capable of destroying entire fleets? He activated his personal communication array and began composing orders for the Imperial War College. If the Empire was going to face an advanced military threat, they would need new tactics, new weapons, and new strategies. For the first time in his career, High Admiral Sythex was genuinely excited about the prospect of war. On Earth, the return of the Omega fleet was met with relief, pride, and a growing awareness that humanity had just stepped onto a much larger stage. Admiral Chen briefed the Global Defense Council in a secure facility deep beneath the Swiss Alps, her presentation laying out the implications of first contact with ruthless clarity. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "48 hours ago, humanity fought its first interstellar war. We won. But that victory has created a new set of problems." A holographic display showed the tactical data from Admiral Webb's battle, the casual destruction of alien warships playing out in devastating detail. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they watched ships larger than city blocks simply cease to exist. "The immediate threat has been neutralized," Chen continued, "but we have to assume that these Zephyrians will respond to the loss of their fleet. Our xenology teams have analyzed their ship designs and tactical doctrine. This is a military species with significant experience in interstellar warfare." President Martinez of the American Federation leaned forward. "Admiral, are you telling us that we're now at war with an alien empire?" "I'm telling you that we've just announced our existence to a species that appears to have no concept of peaceful coexistence. Based on their attack patterns and ship configurations, the Zephyrians are what our models predicted: apex predators who view other species as either resources to be exploited or threats to be eliminated." Director Singh of the European Space Consortium raised her hand. "What are our options?" "Limited," Chen admitted. "We can wait for them to come to us, which gives us the advantage of fighting in our own solar system but puts Earth directly at risk. We can attempt to locate their homeworld and strike first, which maintains the element of surprise but commits us to a full offensive war. Or we can try to hide and hope they never find us." "Hiding isn't really an option," observed Chancellor Kim of the Pacific Alliance. "They already know we exist, and they have the coordinates of our first contact." Chen nodded. "Which brings us to the real question: do we want to fight this war defensively or offensively?" The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Defensive war meant waiting for the aliens to attack Earth directly. Offensive war meant taking the Omega fleet into enemy territory and attempting to destroy an entire interstellar civilization. "Admiral," President Martinez asked quietly, "in your professional opinion, what would be the likely outcome of a defensive strategy?" Chen's answer was stark. "If they send enough ships, Earth falls. Our planetary defense grid is formidable, but it's designed to stop conventional threats. The Omega fleet numbers 12 ships. If they come at us with hundreds or thousands of vessels, even our advanced technology won't be enough." "And an offensive strategy?" "The Omega fleet is designed for exactly this scenario: small numbers, advanced technology, operating in enemy territory. Our ships can strike targets the enemy doesn't expect, using weapons they can't defend against. We could potentially cripple their military capability before they realize what's happening." The debate that followed would rage for 6 hours, but in the end, the decision was inevitable. Humanity had not survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars by waiting for threats to come to them. The vote was unanimous: the Omega fleet would go hunting. Admiral Webb received his new orders 72 hours after returning to Titan Base, and they were everything he'd hoped for and feared in equal measure. The Global Defense Council had authorized Operation Deep Strike, a preemptive assault on the Zephyrian Empire designed to cripple their military capability before they could mount a full-scale invasion of Earth. He stood in the briefing room aboard the ONS Retribution, addressing his 12 ship commanders via holographic projection. Each face on the display belonged to an officer who had spent years training for this moment, the moment when humanity would either secure its place among the stars or go down fighting.